Hello everyone, and welcome to the Human Art Project. My name is Angie, and I'm your very real human artist. I'm going to get right to it, as this is going to be video number 1 of a multi-video project that took me well over a month to complete. I tried my hand at creating a crazy 1/12 scale room full of handmade miniatures. A room, I might add, that holds a dark and sinister mystery. Today, I'm working backwards and showing you how I created the final component for my scene, a 3D modeled and printed miniature television, because even inanimate tiny people need to occasionally Netflix and chill. I've been 3D modeling for about 13 years. I started with a 3-day beginner's course in Rhino 3D and then basically taught myself on the job along the way. With these skills, I have designed numerous physical products in the self-care and beauty industry that are readily available out in the retail landscape. This project, however, is fun, dumb, and just for me. When I 3D model, I like to break down the overall form into basic geometric shapes, and then manipulate those shapes by adding or subtracting elements until I get the desired outcome. I guess I approach it more as a sculptor, as opposed to a mathematician, although you kinda have to be both to succeed at this discipline. For this particular model, I'm using an image with front, back, and side views as reference. I work in millimeters and set my workspace to small objects. I'm not being overly picky with the exact size or details in this case. Instead, I'm focusing more on getting the dimensions/scale correct. Once I'm finished modeling, I can easily resize it to fit my miniature space. When I work with an imported reference image, I always lock it in place under my model so I can draw over top without it accidentally moving constantly. Here I am working on the details on the back panel, where I use a series of shapes to create the ports and vents. I subtract some shapes from the bulbous rear of the TV and add others. Some 3D modelers like to draw out their components mathematically, line by line, on their Cartesian graph, but I prefer to use as many default shapes as possible and then resort to manually drawing when the shape is more organic. Just like Scrooge McDuck, I try to work smarter, not harder. A nice little pro tip when having to plot out a repeated shape in a specific pattern is to use your array tool. You can duplicate items along your X, Y, or Z axis in a specified quantity and with specific spacing. This is way easier than simply eyeballing, even though I sometimes do that too. I'm not a machine after all. Adding details can truly bring your model to life. I also sometimes like to chamfer or fillet, whatever, the 90-degree edges to give them more character. This all helps to make your model look more realistic. For this particular model, I'm also adding color and assigning some materials. Normally I would do this to quite an in-depth degree if I was going to output a high-res rendering. In this case, I'm simply doing so I can see what I'm working on, and it's more visually interesting for a video. Otherwise, it would be white on white on white, and that would be boring! For the HDMI ports, I drew one side of the image, trimmed the ends to make sure they were even, and then mirrored that shape from one of its endpoints so it would be perfectly symmetrical. I then joined the two open shapes together to form one solid shape. This made it possible for me to extrude it into a 3D solid. Hands up, who's following along? Yeah, I know it can be technical, but at least I'm not using terms like boolean and NURBS. I'll be honest, I still don't really know what NURBS are. last little bit of modeling that I do is the base of the TV. There's really nothing special to say here, it's just two rectangles, so enjoy! I always make sure to center my models and have them sitting on the ground plane when I'm finished. I'm saving frequently throughout and will often create a duplicate file where I merge all of the elements together, so I have one file where I can still manipulate all of the components and one that is a solid form for 3D printing. This little television is going to sit on a TV stand that I've already made because, again, I'm showing you the last step first. To make sure it fits, I quickly model the general size of the stand, and lo and behold, I said I wasn't a machine, but I'm now starting to question that statement because I inadvertently scaled the TV to fit the stand correctly first try. Yeah, I surprised myself with that one. Regardless, I scale it down ever so slightly just to make sure it doesn't overpower the furniture. And just like that, it's done. I save the file again and then duplicate the file so I can merge the individual components together into one solid model. Once that's completed, I export the model as an STL file format, which is the universal extension for 3D printers. I import my model into the Ultimaker Cura print software, which basically gives me a digital representation of my 3D printer's print bed. I have an older Ender 5S printer, which means I have to manually level the bed, which is a pain in the butt. My printer prints best on the right side next to the extruder, so I move my model over to what I think the right side is, and yeah, I'm wrong, whatever. Ultimaker really needs to freaking label where the front of the printer is, OMG. Anywho, whatever, I fixed that off camera, and after a quick preview of the print with supports and a brim, it's ready to print. And there she goes, just like smooth jazz, baby.
Oh, it actually... Oh, it snapped off the base. Oh, shoot. I'll have to glue that back on. Oh. This is really on there. That turned out pretty nice. I broke it though. That's supposed to be glued on like that. Oh well, I can fix it. It's okay. Cool.
Unfortunately, I snapped the base off while trying to remove it from the printer. Oops. I think this metallic filament is getting old and it often delaminates. Nothing a little crazy glue can't fix. I proceed with removing the supports and brim off of the print using tweezers and a little clipper. 12 hours later, after the glue is fully cured, I test out the TV on the stand and it's looking good! Next, I gave it a good coat of black spray paint, and once that was dry, proceeded to add details to the back of the TV. I used a silver Sharpie for the HDMI ports, and then miniature paints and a very fine brush to paint the AV ports. This was tricky because, like most adults, I'm myopic as hell. As you can see from this blurry-ass shot, the paint I'm using is Citadel color, which is most commonly used to paint Warhammer figurines. My boyfriend and I typically use them for Zombicide miniatures, but they also work really well for detailing out 3D prints. And there you have it, a completed 1/12 scale flat screen TV. Here is a teaser of the finished project. I hope you stick around for all of the additional parts to this miniature series. I promise you, it's pretty awesome. In the meantime, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Take care, and go make something cool.